All right, welcome everyone. This is I believe, the fifth and the final official event of our CPL Professional Development Series this academic year. So glad to have you all here and really excited for today's session, which will showcase some great work that's happening at three colleges across CUNY. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Alyssa Vine. I'm the University Director of Credit for Prior Learning within CUNY's Office of Academic Affairs. And the job of me and the team that I work with here is really to support the implementation of CUNY's CPL policy at campuses. And I think that the intention of today's session is to show you some innovations that we've been seeing from different colleges, and we're going to be showing three very different aspects of credit for prior learning that are underway at three colleges. We're going to hear about some work around partnership and articulation. We're going to learn about one model for portfolio assessment that's in development, and we're also going to learn about some data practices. And our hope is that this information will be useful to you all and also just gives you a sense of what's happening at other campuses that you may want to replicate or learn from, or folks you may want to connect with for information and ideas. I think it's also important to recognize that that even when things are still in development and still taking shape, it's important for us to recognize good ideas where we have them so that we can help each other grow and continue to innovate. Before I jump in to introduce
2545.
someone here, sorry. I am, before we jump into the presentations from our colleagues at the School of Professional Studies, at Bronx Community College, and at BMCC, I'm just going to share a little bit of information. I think most people who have joined today know and understand the basics around CPL and the fact that this can be a really important tool for increasing rates of persistence and completion at colleges, and saving students time and money. And that is really what this work is geared toward, is how can we really make sure that we're supporting CUNY students, especially in this time where there's so much emphasis on bringing adult learners into the colleges and supporting their circumstances. Just make sure people are coming into the waiting room. I think that I just say this because I think as we're gearing up for the end of this semester and thinking ahead to next year, just some of what you'll hear about today, I think should help us think about one, what do we know about the students who are receiving credit for prior learning, and how can we make sure that we're thinking about data tracking for the purpose of telling the important story of the impact that this work can have, and two, making sure that we're thinking about the types of partnerships that we can cultivate both within our own, within your own campuses or within the university, and also external partners that are connected to industry and other important organizations. And then three, we're having a lot of emphasis this year and going into next year on portfolio assessment, and so showing one model that is new and different and up and coming and still in development, hopefully will be really useful. And it's all really aimed toward the impact that this can have for students. Very quickly, those of you who have come to these sessions before have probably seen this slide a million times, but I think it's really important that we always just remember some aspects of the policy that we need to keep in mind. And one is that faculty are the decision makers. Faculty are the subject matter experts who really understand the curriculum, and they're the ones that the policy places, it's within their purview, as all academic processes are, to decide where and how CPL credit should be awarded. Also keeping in mind that credit can be awarded for major courses, it can fulfill gen ed requirements, and it can also fulfill departmental electives. General elective credit can be awarded, but should be a last resort because it's not as helpful to students in saving them time on their path to a degree. CPL credits don't fulfill residency requirements, so they're quite similar to transfer in that regard. And I think that's an important piece of this, especially where transfer is more familiar and people understand those processes better and how those fit into degree programs more so than CPL. So CPL credits do not fulfill residency requirements. And finally, when students transfer from one CUNY college to another, CPL credits transfer the same as if they took the courses at the receiving college. They're not subject to reevaluation by the receiving college. So those are just a few points to keep in mind during today's presentation and as you're thinking about possible paths forward for CPL by your campus and your departments. Also, I'll just review the CPL mechanisms of CUNY's policy, which include standardized exams, which is the only required piece of the CPL policy. All colleges must award credit for the 6 exam programs that are named within the policy and that are listed here. So any student who has a qualifying score on those exams should receive credit. What that credit is determined by faculty in the relevant academic department. Non-collegiate learning, which is when we're thinking about industry credentials, continuing education programs, professional licenses, military learning, other organized learning experiences. These can be evaluated by academic departments to determine CPL opportunities. And we have some good national resources as well as some local resources to support that work, which I won't be getting into today, but happy to point you toward those resources at any time. Additionally, departments can decide to utilize challenge exams where they develop an exam that's very specifically geared toward the learning outcomes of a particular course in order to create that as a pathway for earning CPL credit. And finally, portfolio assessment. CUNY colleges can decide to make portfolio available. Just this week, we distributed some information about an upcoming opportunity for CUNY faculty who are interested in developing portfolio opportunities within their department. If you have a specific course in mind that you think would be a really good fit for portfolio purposes, this may be a good opportunity for you. I'll drop the link in the chat a little bit later so that you can share it if you haven't seen this information. But portfolio assessment is only really available at a handful of CUNY colleges right now, but we're really hoping to expand that going into next year. So it's a great way for students to have their individual learning assessed and to earn credit for work experience and other kinds of life experience that aligns with the learning in college level courses. So at this time, so that's my CPL info that I always make sure is available in these sessions. But today we're really here to hear from the campuses. So our first presenters are Holly Broadfoot and Lana Callender from the CUNY School of Professional Studies, and we're really fortunate to have them here today to talk with us about some effective data practices that SPS has in place. And I'll hand it over to Holly and Lana.
Thank you, Alyssa. Hi, everyone. Good morning. You could move to the first slide. And a lot of the presentation, Holly will discuss the data aspect of it, but I will start with kind of just how we code students in CUNY first. One of the directives from CUNY is formalizing the CPL opportunities and creating and configuring rules so that once a student does submit CPL or has CPL, it's already coded into CUNY first. So essentially, we verify the credential, we verify if a student completed an exam. SPS has several exams that we accept beyond just the AP, the CLEP, the standardized. We have also Sailor, for example. Once we receive a transcript, etc., we enter this data into the CUNY First test results. Having this will then allow us to pull the rule, next slide, into the text credits automated page. A lot of this is, again, just directives from CUNY. And our configured rules will reflect here based on the credential that has already been configured. At SPS, because we are a transfer only school, we do have students who are completing CPL as new or readmits, new admits. We have students who are continuing students. So it depends on the term in which, uh, or the student status that will determine which articulation term we use. That might be a little bit different for depending on the school, but for continuing students, we articulate based on the term that they submit the CPL. And for new students, it would be the year ahead. Or the term ahead. This impacts the work that Holly does because I know she looks at the CPL data based on the term completed. Next slide. Once we verify, we enter the data, we fetch the rule. We decided in 2022 we needed a better way to track which students are completing CPL, and we developed the student group. It's just CRPL at CUNY SPS. So since summer of 2022, we've been tracking students by student group. We're using the student group versus the student in the service indicator because service indicator is tied to enrollment. So that was a bit of a hiccup in the beginning because it could impact students whether or not they can enroll. So the student group was the better option, and depending on, again, student status, if they're a new student versus if they're a continuing student, the effective date may change. If it's a new student, the effective date would be the term in which they start versus a continuing student.
What's up? Good question. Your email they have on file here is a Gmail account. I
I'm
get
sorry.
Where are you? I'm at the dealership.
Sorry about it. One thing to note is because we're tracking the student group, we do have to run some data at the end by census to remove any new admits who did not enroll. So they might have applied to SPS. We would have processed their transfer credit. Oftentimes students will submit CPL with their transfer application to CUNY SPS, and we process them like we process their transfer credit. And in those situations, we would remove the student group if the student has decided not to enroll at SPS so that they're not being tracked in the data that Holly does. So there is a little bit of a cleanup with the student group that happens at census for students who did not enroll. Next slide. Once we have the student group, and this is I think the fun part for us on the kind of enrollment and student services side is that we can now identify those students through EAB Navigate. And once we have that tag, that category in EAB Navigate as an academic advisor, as a transfer credit evaluator, experiential learning, we can go in and kind of filter out students based on their enrollment term. We can filter out based on performance. Their performance data, the credits accumulated, and then use that to send targeted communication. For example, an academic advisor might reach out to their students who completed CPL to let them know, they're close to graduating, to let them know to file for graduation, or different CPL opportunities that they might be interested in taking. And because our process, we process students after they complete CPL, we are identifying as we grow, as we have more and more students, as we scale, that we would like to identify students earlier in the process, students who are just interested in taking CPL. So one thing we're looking ahead to do is develop a request form where students can inform the college of their CPL plan, which opportunities they plan to take, when they're planning to take the CPL opportunity. Having that insight earlier would allow us to better track how long it's taking students to complete the opportunities, which opportunities they're planning to take. Does it even apply towards their degree? We want to make sure students are not interested in taking something that they may not need, right? Also, it gives the registrar some information ahead of time. A lot of our students are taking CPL in their final semester to graduate. So having that information, knowing that there's students that are taking things in progress that might not appear on their SPS record yet. Or academic advisement to let them know, hey, these students are in the pipeline of taking these courses or these opportunities to satisfy prerequisites, et cetera. So that request form, we're hoping to build out in 2026, hopefully we can have that go live, and it will just give us better insight, better data of potential participants for CPL. And then Holly would be able to also use that data to track completion and also track success outcomes for students who actually complete it versus those who don't. So that's something we're looking ahead to doing with EAB and our CPL groups. Holly?
So Lana showed you how CPL is coded, and pre-2022, basically what we were doing was very one-time data pulls. We would pull data at the end of terms, get a giant list of MPL IDs, just keep adding that to another list of MPL IDs, and there got to be this thing of who was the keeper of the Excel sheet. So Lana's team started coding people in 2022, and then we also worked with our IR department to code people back before that. So we would start having a clean list. So what the student group has allowed us to do is kind of focus on the next step, which was how to turn the clean coding into usable data that helps us make program decisions. And like I said, it's kind of a 4-step process. First is deciding on your clean coding for us as a student group. I've been working with our IR department and developing dashboards. So we are moving away from static reports only to more real-time dashboards. And also the focus is on trends, like I said, not these one-time data pools. Yeah. So what you're seeing now is, for instance, that's one of the metrics I look at in the top left, but the enrollment performance degree completion outcome metrics, those are different pages out of Power BI that my IR department has built for me. And I'm still going back and forth. I had emails with them yesterday saying, can you add this table? Can you make this table? But those are kind of the areas we're looking at. So where I'm focusing on retention, especially impacts on 1 year, looking at graduation over time in 2 to 6 year windows, academic performance trends. These are how many credits someone's taking, GPA, and also can break that down by ethnicity, gender, etc. And then looking at what are CPL participation across cohorts and programs. One thing I'll mention, and this was something that I've had to work on, is it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole where you are either overwhelmed with data or really trying to start getting into regression reports and are we comparing exactly the same exact student, etc. So I kind of had to take a step back and say, my focus is, does CPL make a difference? And if it doesn't help me answer that question, then I put it to the side for someone else to look at. Okay, next. So this is kind of where the payoff is, because clean coding is allowing us to do several things, but these 4 are really have been important to us. And these are the type of tools you can use when you're running and you're having to defend CPL programs, when you're having to answer the question, does it make a difference? So I look at CPL versus non-CPL outcomes, and that kind of helps me prove CPL effectiveness. I'm looking at gaps and opportunities, identifying trends over time. So this can help me see where CPL is succeeding or falling short, either across cohorts or across programs. I can pinpoint program needs. So I can see which programs are doing well, which programs are not using CPL as much, and start seeing how we can then work with Lana's team to pinpoint where we can do communication and what that communication might be. And then, like I said, it's supporting planning communication. We can use data as evidence for funding and resource allocation. Next. So basically this works because of clean coding and the partnership with IR and your registration or transfer department. So the thing I really want to say is you don't need a complex model. What you just need is something consistent and something repeatable. And like I said, when it really ends with, it comes down to what I would say are these four things. You have to start with clean coding on the front end, have a strong partnership with IR, focus on just a few meaningful metrics, not everything, and then build something repeatable so that you aren't just waiting on random one-time pieces of data. And doing that, I think, at least it's helped us really use CPL data as something that is useful and something we can use on an ongoing basis.
Great, thank you so much, Holly and Lana. I think there's a lot to take away from this this approach. We're going to save questions for the end so that we can get through all three presenters. So we'll move on now to partnership and CPL expansion, and I will hand it over to Jessica Seliger from Bronx Community College.
Thank you, Alyssa. Good morning, everybody. My audio's okay? My internet's okay? Okay, excellent. Holly and Lana, I'm always inspired by how far along SPS is, so really appreciate your presentation. And Alyssa, thank you for inviting BCC to share today. I will say I am deep in CPL this week between this session, work on Workforce Pell, and our academic master planning process that I'll talk a little about. So really grateful to learn from all of you. And so we'll talk a little bit about how we've really expanded uptake and interest, hey Ted, in CPL today. And I see a few other BCC names. So I'm going to hit on three ways that I think we've been able to essentially gain buy-in and interest from more groups within and also outside BCC. One is integrating CPL as a core part of our academic program planning on the degree side. The second is partnering with faculty, which, there's so much to say about how important that is. That's really where CPL starts, but I can share an example of a more innovative way we've done that. And then the third is starting to seek external opportunities. How can we partner with outside training providers, not just our own workforce development division, to leverage their curricula for CPL? And just by way of introduction, I think it's in my background, but I'm the Dean of Workforce Development and Continuing Education at BCC. I report to our Office of Academic Affairs, so I think that's an important note just to contextualize some of how and why I think CPL has been effective, and I think that organizational structure matters when we're thinking about new ways to integrate practices or policies into academic programs. So I'll start with our academic master planning process. This is our second cycle. It's a 5-year cycle that really assesses degree, and this time around non-degree programs, against labor market needs. So we're looking at student enrollment, retention, graduation, earnings trends alongside labor market data to think about where there's opportunity for growth, realignment, or sunsetting programs. In the first plan, it was almost exclusively focused on assessing academic programs, which is certainly meaty. This time around, though, we've dedicated a section of it to credit for prior learning. So that's one of the three kind of pillars of the academic master plan, really honing in on recommendations to expand, incorporate industry and micro credentials into our degree programs, but also looking at process improvement and marketing and communications. And we have a working group dedicated to CPL that's made up of faculty, admissions, my office, registrar's office, veteran services, all serving on the committee. And so our aim is to have buy-in from all of the different parties at the beginning. We heard a lot of feedback from faculty, for instance, that mapping to career paths is not clear on their program web pages, or from admissions that they need more language and material collateral from us to talk about CPL to prospective students, especially adult students. So I'm really grateful to be at a campus where I think that there's an openness and I'm not faced with resistance, and I know that that's not always the case. You can go to the next slide. So I'm really focused. I think I essentially hit on this slide, but there are 3 key areas of our academic master plan, credit for prior learning being the third, and we're most focused on stackable or micro credentials in this academic master plan. We have not done as deep of a dive into Veterans Affairs or other types of exam-based CPL, which I'm sure are ripe for exploration. Just decided that was not going to be the focus or the priority this time. You can go to the next slide. This is an example of, we won't go into so much depth in the numbers here, but one way we've engaged faculty in a listening session as part of the AMP process. So we really have emphasized post-graduation earnings using the CUNY wage dashboard as a metric for evaluating our academic programs, and then tied that to CPL. How can we boost these outcomes, specifically our post-graduation 1-year, 5-year, and 10-year wage earnings, by embedding industry credentials or having stackable credentials, or even post-graduation continuing education opportunities, which is kind of outside of CPL, but thinking about across the continuum, how are we bringing students in, out, and how is CPL then perhaps impacting their post-graduation outcomes? And that's where I could see having a better tracking mechanism like you have at CPS would enable us to get some of that data. You can go to the next slide. Second, want to talk about partnerships with faculty, and I have not been in the other PD sessions, so I'm sure I'm, in a sense, stating the obvious, but really excited to share about something we've done with our AS Health Sciences degree at BCC. So this launched last academic year, and it was designed with industry certifications and micro-credentials as part of the process. There were industry roundtables, and there were folks from my unit sitting alongside faculty, and just by way of kind of 1 second background, this major was started to support students who come in with nursing intent or rad tech intent, don't get accepted, and then typically stop out. They're not often transferring to other majors here, or they're going into liberal arts, something unrelated. Health sciences is already by far our largest degree program at BCC. And we have partnered with faculty, not just in designing it, but also thinking about how to continue to embed credit for prior learning. So it passed curriculum committee this year and will be effective next year. They've created a 2-credit elective course, which is required toward the degree, that is essentially open for any of what they call a smorgasbord elective course. It's for any industry certification that, we don't need it. The point being, we don't need an MOU for every single industry certification, but they would assess the curriculum. So right now it's phlebotomy, EKG, pharm tech. There are probably a few others. And this really allows matriculated students a choice of almost specialization so that they're getting credit toward their degree. They can do the courses over the summer or winter break, the way we've set the schedule, and they can work in their field of interest while they're in school. It also, of course, is kind of building out in a more robust way the pathway into the matriculated side from the non-degree side by really thinking more broadly about what could count as CPL toward that degree. I think that there's potential to replicate this in fields like education or IT, cybersecurity, where if there's an elective course required, instead of prescribing which one counts for CPL, if there are multiple that it could count toward, I think this could be a model. And I really just want to hammer home that this couldn't have happened without it being faculty led. And so I'm very grateful for that. Next slide. A newer area for us is venturing into partnerships with external providers. So we have CPL for industry certifications. I'll take IT as an example, like the CompTIA A+, Net Plus, et cetera. Those are standard across CUNY for the most part. We are now really interested in engaging our faculty to assess the full curriculum of, let's say, a Perscolis or an NPower, which I know have worked with some of the other schools on this call to look at other courses beyond just the certifications, or other credits, I should say, beyond the certifications that they might be eligible for. Again, I would say some of the barriers to this are having the funding to provide the faculty with the time to prioritize this, and having just kind of the bandwidth in academic affairs to really think about what this would look like. But I will say that there's an openness to it. So it's not so much a culture shift as it is a prioritization that we need to make. And I would say that we have seen, and I'm curious to hear from others if you've seen this too, providers coming out of the woodwork in the past 2 to 3 months looking to partner with the school. You're nodding, Holly. I imagine they're interested in workforce Pell funding capture. I'll take it. I think the partnerships are beneficial. I think there is some innovation in the workforce Pell funding split, and I don't know what it is or exactly what the mechanisms would be, but I think that could be something really interesting down the road. I see this as a way to expand my workforce continuing ed offerings, where there's a partner who has stronger industry partnerships, a really strong curriculum, deeper expertise in a type of training that we don't. And we're looking at partnering almost like a dual enrollment, but on the non-degree side, where we could stack credentials, where let's say we do a more entry-level IT certification. Per Scholas, just to pick an example many of us know, a more ubiquitous one does a more advanced one. But students are enrolled in both cohorts at the same time and then get a significant portion of credit toward the, let's say, cybersecurity degree as a result. So this is something that's in the works, really in the proposal phase. And I think we're looking for philanthropic funding to support a lot of these partnerships right now. But perhaps Workforce Pell or even Tap for Pell will offer a more sustainable funding stream or will offset some of the philanthropic cost. Okay, I think last slide, Alyssa. So what's next? I would say the biggest barrier to us implementing a lot of what we want to do is lack of capacity. We are hiring a manager of credit for prior learning, which I'm just so thrilled about, and cannot wait for whomever that person ends up being to start. We have purchased the KL credit predictor. We've gotten career coach on our pages. As I'm sure many of you can appreciate, these are small wins that feel like big wins, given the number of hurdles of purchasing and procurement that we've had to go through. So really excited about what's coming in the next academic year. I think Workforce Pell is a big question mark that I'm pretty deep in, and the whole shebang is a question mark. But I do think that having credit for prior learning as kind of a central requirement of Workforce Pell eligible courses and of NISOP courses has really elevated CPL on campus and academic affairs, at least at BCC. Really appreciative for SPS's presentation today, and we'll be taking back how we can do more systematized data and tracking, and then expanding external partnerships is going to be a continued focus and necessity. And so that's what we have in store, and really more to come.
Great. Thank you so much, Jessica. Such good information and progress. And we will move to our third and final presenter for today, Revital Kaiser from Borough of Manhattan Community College.
Thanks, Alyssa, and good morning, everyone. So my name is Revital Kaiser, and I'm from the Media Arts and Technology Department at BNCC, and these are the 3 degree programs that we offer for animation and motion graphics, video arts and technology, multimedia design and programming. That includes 3 tracks, which are graphic design, web and UX design, and game design. Next slide. Our CPL team also includes chairperson, Professor Shari McConan, and Professor Melanie Oram. Next slide. Felisa asked me to report on the progress that we have made in my department towards implementation of CPL. We started a year ago to develop portfolio-based CPL assessment processes for several courses. We have not yet implemented the process with students, although we have had a couple of inquiries, but they have not progressed towards assessment. We are one of the first departments at BNCC to develop portfolio-based assessments. If you can move to the next slide. Because our disciplines are inherently portfolio-driven, and we are teaching skills that some people acquired on job sites. Next slide. We believe that most of our production courses can be eligible for CPL, but as first stage implementation, we decided to focus on introductory courses and on courses that develop skills and competencies that can be easily translated to a job assignment. For example, someone who's done work in graphic design may be eligible for CPL for MMA 100, Foundations of Digital Graphic Design. Next slide. And we decided to start with introductory courses to capture a larger pool of potential CPL candidates. And because if CPL is to be awarded for one course only, it should be for the introductory course in the sequence. We also determined that our internship course is well suited for CPL. Students who have professional experience in the field have probably already met the expectations of our experiential learning courses. For most, and that's the next slide. For most of our courses, we require at least two forms of proofs of learning, an exam, or a portfolio of professional work and or approved coursework, professional credits, or professional references. Next slide. And we design multiple paths for CPL to accommodate all kinds of prior experiences. So for example, again, I'm taking MMA 100 as the example. Students can get CPL based on portfolio and work references, or based on portfolios and approved coursework, or based on portfolio and an exam. This is a decision chart to determine which is the best pathways for CPL for students in MMA1 who request CPL for MMA 100. So if they have worked in the field and can provide references, they can submit the references and the portfolios. If they do not have references, but they have equivalent pre-approved coursework, then they can submit the credentials for the coursework and a portfolio. If they don't have either of these, then they can take a test and submit a portfolio. We require at least two proofs of learning to meet the challenge of verifying that the work in the portfolio generally represents student learning. The reality is that AI today can produce work that is similar to the kind of work students do in our classes. So to address this concern, we require references, source files, and artifacts from different stages of the project, of the project's development. We created requirements for portfolios for courses, in addition to a document body of work. Students will also have to map their experience to the course learning outcome in the portfolio worksheets. We are currently redesigning our portfolio worksheets to be a bit more student-friendly. Next slide. This is how we picture the CPL process, or the process that students will follow to acquire CPL. The starting point could be an academic advisor, it could be in admission, it could be the CPL self-assessment form that will exist on the BMTC website. The program coordinator will receive the submissions of the self-assessment form, and if deemed appropriate, he will invite the candidate for an interview and will handle all the communications with the students. The assessment of the proofs of learning will be done in consultation with the course coordinators. Next slide. The CPL workload will be managed mainly by the program coordinators who are on 3-hour release time. And this, of course, will be revisited based on the number of CPL applications that we will get. Next slide. These are some of the challenges ahead. We have started with promoting our CPL. We introduced the program during our most recent new students orientation, which was a good start, but it's clear that we need to increase the visibility and reinforce the message across multiple channels. We are also reviewing how to educate candidates about the CPL portfolios. In the current model, the program coordinators meet one-on-one with candidates, but this approach, of course, is not scalable if CPL requests increase. And an additional challenge is the assessment of non-academic coursework, which remains to be addressed, and I imagine it will be also on the college level. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. I think that's a really interesting. The approach for portfolio assessment is a little different than it currently exists at most CUNY colleges, in that it's really department specific, and that's a model that our office is really excited to support. And we're actually going to be we're developing a student support workshop that hopefully could fill some of the gaps in the vision that that Revital speaks of, like where we may be able to provide some additional support that would relieve the burden and hopefully make an initiative such as this more scalable for campuses. So more information coming soon on that. But at this time, I would love to open this up for questions, and we have all of our presenters are here with us, and we can definitely, feel free to come off of mute to ask your question or drop it in the chat, whatever you're more comfortable doing. Go ahead. Go ahead, Kathy.
Oh, okay. Sorry, everybody. I just had a question, Alyssa, about I would be very interested in setting up the student group code for CPL. Could we make that a CUNY universal student group code, or?
That's a great question, which I will bring to the University Registrar's Office so that we can think about ways of either supporting campuses and implementing the way that SPS has done it, or whether that it is something that we could set up for central implementation. Thanks for that question.
And then once it's created, it could be also allowed to port into EAB University.
Yeah, no, it's a good thought. It's a good thought. Thank you. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you very much for this informative presentations. I have a question from SPS, actually colleagues. The way that you track students for the retention and effectiveness, how do you actually follow them? Because do you actually keep them as a cohort when they come to SPS or when they start using CPL? Because people may get the credits in different time of their education. How do you actually review and assess the effectiveness?
We do cohorts by when they enter, when they're admitted. And that's a really great question. And that's one of the things about like going down a rabbit hole. I could go in and try to get some very complicated dashboards of when did someone get the CPL? Let me relate it to the cohort. Let me do this. But like I said, I'm using trends, and I can have an offline conversation with you of why I've chosen to do certain things. So I will go back and see like what is a graduation rate or what is a 1-year retention. I don't right now, when I'm looking at the trends, care if they earn that CPL their first term or their last term.
Awesome. Okay.
I'm looking at does CPL impact my 1 year retention? Now I can dig deeper about that, but my data is already showing. So it may not matter when they earn it. That's a different question. I just know that at some point, if they earn CPL, that student group with CPL coded has a higher retention. So it has a positive impact.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay,
Donna? Oh,
no,
sorry.
that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Go ahead, Donna.
Thank you. This question is for the presenter. I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name from BCC when we were talking about the academic master plan. The question I had was in this, I believe it was from the slide, where they talked about assessing degree and non-degrees and aligning them with the labor market needs. I was curious where is the source for the labor market needs, and how long does it take to create a vehicle by which we can connect a degree program to a labor market need, and then of course retrofit all of the other sort of
Yeah.
criteria of micro credentials and what have you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great question. So we used Lightcast, formerly Burning Glass or Burning Glass MC's labor market data. The first academic master plan, we did the analysis ourselves. This time around, we essentially contracted out the initial data analysis to them. So they were able to look at our specific slate of programs against our specific geographic area and the job outcomes, the wages, projected growth, shrinkage, et cetera. It was, I would say it was a lot of information. Overall, a useful for directional information, but as an outside entity lacked the context that we needed to make it actionable, but we would not have had the bandwidth to do. It was beyond what our IR could do. Your question was, I'm sorry, Donna, how long it takes?
Yeah, well, I mean, so
Yeah.
it's good. So you basically hired out the process to gather that kind of information about the career trends in the
Yes.
area. And then how long did it take to be able to work with the departments to be able to create?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it has taken my colleague, our Associate Dean of Curricular Matters, and myself about 18 months, but that's because we are not able to solely dedicate our time to this. It doesn't necessarily need to take 2 years. So that's just being very transparent. We are making recommendations. We've engaged faculty along the way through the steering committee, working group, all of the kind of governance entities on campus. The implementation will follow. And I think it depends. So AS Health Sciences, the program I spoke about, was a recommendation of the last academic master plan. And so I think the question of how long it takes to implement and align programs probably depends on how ready the faculty are to do it. In this case, having learned from the first time that it was challenging to implement, not because faculty weren't interested, but again, priorities shift. We are putting more in the recommendation section around implementation and tracking implementation of recommendations this time. So, for instance, a recommendation that we already have in play is hiring a manager of credit for prior learning to focus on embedding micro credentials and process there. I don't know. I always say things take 2 years because by the time you go through NICET approval, it's 2 years. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, so basically it's low hanging fruit, right? You're going after right now the degrees that exist already that you know are pretty popular, and you're basically harvesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think what would, right. So there's definitely low hanging fruit. And then there's the, I guess, higher hanging fruit to continue the metaphor that's in here too, like looking at our liberal arts and sciences major and low enrolled programs. And do we sunset them? And that probably is a full academic master plan process, of 5 years to assess it, to decide what to do with it, and then to put that into place. But I will say it's been much more than a report that's lived on a shelf. the recommendations from the last one, as I'm, very close to the process right now, have all been implemented. And it's been referenced when changes have been put forward to curriculum committee or Senate or CUNY Board of Trustees or NICED. And so it has provided a lot of guidance. And just to bring it back to CPL, I think that incorporating CPL into the academic master plan is a lot more than paying lip service to something. It truly has set the priorities for our academic program planning.
That's terrific. Thanks for such a full and complete response, and I'm gonna not take up any more time. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Veronica, do you want to jump in with your question?
Probably just all presentations were great. Thanks. There's a lot of ideas that I think that many of us could probably adopt here. I did like the screenshot for test results posting. I think I tried to ask someone at OU, at another registrar's office, like, how do we go about getting that security? So I don't have that. And as CPL liaison, I probably need that. So that is something that's super important. So thanks for showing that. I think the student group's also a great addition. And perhaps we can actually apply that pretty quickly. In terms of like workforce, we have at CSI a couple of outside partners that would like us to develop course articulations for their programs. And Alyssa has been involved with our direct support professional. We were trying to do something with Kingsborough and New York State. There was some funding. It has since went to, I don't know where it is, but we are working on just making the course articulations regardless, mapping the training to courses, working with faculty in the departments. And I don't know if anyone has any experience, but there's also Credible Messenger. I know that I think School of Labor Studies offered this. If anybody else is familiar with it, please let me know. We are trying to do a crosswalk for that, and it's hard for us to get a curriculum that I can actually view online. And there was just one other thing, I think. Just one sec. I'm looking. Oh, we do have Leap to Teacher at CSI. I know that it's throughout CUNY. There are some students who are working in schools, whether in para or maybe teacher's aide or some sort. I mean, yes, we have the CDA. Is there anybody else working on something related to paraprofessionals? Is there any way that we can actually give them some sort of credit? And just again, talking out loud. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Veronica. I think that those are all really good questions, and I think it really points to the value in kind of convening these conversations to share ideas. And I would say that I'd be interested in talking with anybody thinking about paraprofessionals as a potential portfolio approach. So offline, different day conversation. Sarala, do you want to come in with your question?
Yes, a really, really quick one. I thought this was an amazing presentation, and just being familiar with the AMP and sitting on a lot of these committees. Jessica, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'll pull from the chat my colleague's question as well, and maybe we could put it together into one really short one. And so I guess with myself and Vincent, is there a way, or maybe can you speak to if there's any resistance from AAS programs with putting this in place? And maybe is there a way for us, yes, there are some barriers, but is there a way for us to kind of move it from the theoretical and the planning? Because I do know the amount of work that we've already put in to maybe trying to get something in that might be a bit more tangible, getting something in place. Is that possible? I don't know if that was a clear question.
I think this is a question for me, Sarala, and you're asking,
yes, Jessica, yes.
do you, okay. And the question is, maybe you can clarify, make sure I'm answering it. But
sure. It's I'm putting my question and Vincent's question together. So Vincent is asking, was there any resistance from AAS programs?
I see.
And also, is there a way for us to kind of put something into place, because we put so much work into this already?
Yeah. I have not experienced resistance from AAS programs to accept CPL, generally speaking. Now, of course, it depends on the course or the partner coming forward. A challenge, but not resistance, would be, for instance, that I'm experiencing right now. There, at a 2-year school, there are not a lot of elective credits in our majors, especially in the IT related ones, and especially for our students, who need to do prereqs before the math prereqs that are specific to that major. So that's an issue I'm having, and I don't want to take this too far down this rabbit hole, Alyssa, but with computer science, which is an AS, not an AAS. So it's this, I think, fine line that I'm finding from Howie Clampman, who you probably know, Sarala, who's saying, right, we want to offer credits toward our AAS degrees for apprenticeship opportunities in high school, to pick that example. But we also need to make sure that the students get the fundamentals in accounting and business, just to play this example out, and to be able to transfer with that knowledge, because of course we're a transfer school. And so I think what I've experienced is less resistance and more not a lot of wiggle room. I don't know how much more, how to put that a little more formally. And that could definitely be a place of learning. And the second part of your question, I'm sorry to make you ask it a third time.
Oh, no, it's just, is there anything that we can implement, even on a very small scale?
I mean, I am really intrigued, and I haven't had the benefit of attending the full PD series, Alyssa and team, but I can imagine I would learn as much from the others in the recordings as I have today, to see where there's more standardization university-wide for CPL, because that really helps kickstart the process. Or if not standardization, a recommendation we can go to a faculty member with, and so they can skip over much of the initial kind of crosswalking process.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. I'm gonna call on Sam, since he hasn't had a chance to ask, and he'll probably get our last question today. Although, please drop any other questions in the chat so that we can follow up.
It's not really a question; it's more of a statement. People were asking about childcare paraprofessionals and DOE paraprofessionals. At Hostos, we have a challenge exam for those students, and it's actually been one of our more successful CPL opportunities. We've had over 100 students. I just looked at the numbers for this semester. We've reached that, get 3 credits for one of our EDU early childhood education classes. But basically, it's sort of like a portfolio, but it's not as extensive. Basically, they just have to kind of present a little bit of their history, the hours they've worked, kind of some of the things that they've worked on, and have a letter from their supervisor, or someone who kind of knows what they do on the job. But it is, we use a challenge exam just because it's a little bit easier than doing a whole portfolio process. But a lot of our students in our education program do get credit through that challenge exam.
That's great. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Sam. And I think you'll probably hear from some folks who would love to learn more about that too. And that brings us right to time. And I just want to thank all of our presenters so much for sharing your expertise today, and for everybody who joined for your time. Please reach out with questions, ideas for other PDs you would like to see us hold. We're starting to plan for next year. And I hope everybody has a great day and a very nice weekend.